Hello, welcome to today's edition of Humor Hour, the show where you tell me jokes. Well, actually, I tell the jokes, but you send them in. And the first joke comes from Mr. Prentice Gibson of Clapperton Down. Mr. Gibson says, what do you call three downers at the bottom of the sea? Not enough downers. Very good. We're starting off very strong today, aren't we? This one is from Brian E. Ditton of Collier's Lane. What's the difference between a downer and a trampoline? You take off your shoes before you jump on a trampoline. How true! How very true! I mean, you don't want to damage a perfectly good trampoline, do you? Very good indeed. This is from Mrs. Jemima Hughes of Coronation Avenue. And her joke is, if you see a drowning downer, what do you throw him? I don't know, a brick? An anvil? Well, no, you can't very well throw an anvil, can you? What about a grenade? Well, no. Who has grenades these days? Answer, another downer! I told you it was good. That's wonderful. It's very good. You see, they both drown. And here's another one. How do you save a drowning downer? Answer, who cares? Very good. Lovely jokes. Lovely jokes today. Very funny indeed. And here's one from, not that one, no, this one here. It's from Clive Pritchard of Sladebrook Road. Mr. Pritchard, what do you have for us today? Question. How is a puppy like a mortally wounded downer? Answer. Eventually they'll both stop whining. Oh, Mr. Pritchard, you're quite the character, aren't you? Oh. You know, I miss my dog. What am I saying? I don't miss anything at all. I've got it all right here. Let's see what else we've got. Yes, we have something from our dear friend and faithful contributor, Mr. Persky Blackyoung. Yes, as you can tell from his name, Mr. Blackyoung isn't actually a real Englishman. He's an Afrikaner from South Africa, but he's doing his patriotic best to fit in. So, what do you have for us today, Mr. Blackyoung? Question. How is a downer like an apple? Answer. They both look good hanging from a tree. I'm not sure I get it. Oh, I see. Yes, very good. Hanging from a tree. And here's another one. What's the difference between a downer and the Black Plague? Well, one is a deadly organism that can destroy an entire city, and the other is a bacterium. Oh, very good. Well, I think it's going to be hard to top that one, but we must slog on, eh? It's one of our greatest English virtues. I have one here from Mr. Thomas Henchley of Longbottom Circle. What have you got for us, Mr. Henchley? Question. Why do we bury downers 20 feet underground? Answer, because deep down, they're really nice people. Deep down, yeah. I think that's the best one of all. It really is. Very good. Remember, no one has to be a downer, but if you feel a bit down, take your joy. And if you see someone who seems a bit down, make sure he takes his joy. It's as simple as that. Happiness is a choice, and those who won't choose it are a threat to the rest of us. If you hear a good joke, please don't hesitate to drop a note marked Humour Hour at our studio, 2 Marlborough House, in central Wellington Wells. Yes, I'm afraid we've come to the end of our time. Tune in again next time for the best in humour. See you soon. Well, it's getting late, isn't it? And it's time for all good citizens to be getting ready to go to bed. Would you like me to read you a bedtime story? Of course you would. Well, sit down next to the fire, if you've got one, and wrap a blanket around yourselves, and I'll tell you something that happened. Tonight's story is called The Pied Piper, and some people say it actually took place. And some people say it actually took place in our very own Hamelin. But who knows? The past is deep and dark and filled with mists and strange things that move in the night. It's best not to go into it. Strange things happen in fairy tales, but even stranger and nastier things happen in the past. Thank goodness we're not living then, and our days are bright and filled with joy. Once upon a time, there was a town called Hamelin. It wasn't the name of the town. That's just what it was called. It was a happy town, full of rich merchants and hard-working smiths and beautiful girls and jovial lads. But awful things can happen to good people. And little did the people of Hamelin know, but dark times were coming. There was a hard winter when wolves came down from the hills and attacked the sheep. And the wolves brought crows which would wait for the sight of rotting meat and then descend in swarms. And some said, though no one ever saw it, that the crows did not always wait for death. And some said it was not only wolves who were murdering animals out in the fields. The crows knew, but they only said caw. But if the winter was hard, the summer was harder still. For the summer brought rats. They came onto the beaches from a ship that had sailed from France. At first there were just a few, but soon there were hundreds of rats, then thousands of them. They swarmed into the town, and they said to themselves in their rat speech, "Here is a rich town. Let us eat everything we can." So they ate the grain, they chewed their way into cupboards to eat the cheese, they even ate chickens when they could corner them. Nothing was safe. The villagers, well, they were at their wits' end. If you can kill one rat, you can set traps for 12 rats. But who can kill 1,000 rats? As long as there are 2 rats, in weeks there'll be dozens. And in weeks after that, there will be thousands again. The villagers were in despair. But one day, a tall man came to town. He was a piper. He played a pipe. So they called him the Pied Piper, for he wore a coat of many colours. He was not very good at playing the pipes, but when the villagers told him to stop playing, he told them, "Although I'm not very good at playing to entertain people, I know how to play to rats." Well, who would play music for rats, you ask? Well, the piper never explained, but he offered the town to pipe their rats away. He said, "It'll cost you a great deal of money. But I promise you, when it's all over, there will be no more rats." He even promised that if he left a single rat, they need pay him nothing. Now the villagers of Hamelin were not poor, but they liked their money. Still, they thought they would never have to pay the piper. I mean, after all, who could possibly rid the town of every last rat? So they agreed to the piper's terms. And I'm afraid we've come to the end of our time. Tune in again tomorrow evening, and I'll tell you the rest of the story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin. Will the town get rid of their rats? And how will they pay the piper? It's a lovely story, and I'm sure you'll enjoy how it ends. For now, this is Jack Worthing saying good night all, and see you tomorrow. Hello, and welcome to today's edition of Humour Hour, the show where you tell me jokes. Well, I tell the jokes, but you send them in. And the first joke comes from Mr. Nigel Plaskett of the Barton. Dear Uncle Jack, I love your show and Humour Hour is my favourite. Here's one I heard at the pub. A man walks into a doctor's office. He has a cucumber up his nose and a carrot in his left ear and a banana in his right ear. What's the matter with me? He asks the doctor. The doctor replies, you're not eating properly. That's excellent, Mr. Plaskett. Very good. I can certainly think of better ways to eat a banana, if I could get one. Very good. This one from Ridgewell Hawks of Hither Lane. I went to see my old friend Angus McTavish the other day. I sense a Scottish joke coming on, do you? I went to see my old friend Angus McTavish the other day, and he was stripping all the wallpaper off his living room wall. Angus, I said, I can't believe you're redecorating. I'm not, he said. I'm moving house. I'm moving house. You could just hear him, eh? Because we all know how stingy the Scots are. Good one, Ridgewell Hawks. Very good. Scottish, eh? What do we have here? This is from Antonia Penelegion of Upper Watling Street. My husband is always complaining that his eye hurts whenever he drinks tea. Well, take the spoon out of the cup, dear, I tell him. Well, you certainly have a very stupid husband, Mrs. Penelegion. Excellent jokes today, my friends. And here's one today from our faithful contributor, Mr. Persky Blatyang. Mr. Blatyang, what have you got for us today? Yeah, very good. An Englishman, a Scotsman and an Irishman walk into a pub together. They each buy a pint of good English ale. And just as they're about to drink deep, 3 flies land in each of their pints and get stuck in the head. Well, the Englishman pushes his beer away in disgust. I'm not bloody well going to drink that, he says. The Scotsman spoons the fly out of the bubbles and drinks the pint. Waste not, want not, he says. And the Irishman grabs the fly by its wings, holds it over his mug and says, spit it out, you bastard! Spit it all out! Very good, Mr. Percy Blatyang of Duke of Leicester Street. Though I have to say, personally, I'm with the Scot on that one. Waste not, want not. Sound advice. And this is from Camilla Buckworth-Jones of Peel Street. A man goes to his doctor. He touches his shoulder and winces. Doctor, he says, it hurts when I touch my shoulder. Then he touches his nose, and it hurts when I touch my nose. And he touches his knee. He says, it hurts when I touch my knee. The doctor says, well, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised you've got a broken finger. That's wonderful, Mr. Bickworth-Jones. Very good. What a twit. Here's one from Felicity Royston, writing from the George and Dragon, here in Hamelin. I thought I'd try the new Joy diet, she says. I didn't know there was a Joy diet. I think it's working. I've lost several days already. Yes, that's good. One sometimes forgets a thing or two, don't we, if we overdo it. You know, I actually think it's best to write things down if they're really important. In fact, I seem to have written a note to myself just the other day. Let's see what it says. Don't forget to do it. Well, I should be a little more specific next time, eh? Well, that was a bit strange. Now, let's see what else we've got. I've got one here from Cyril Pike of Inchinnan Circle. I saw my friend Jeremy walking along the street with his wife the other day. Suddenly, she fell into a manhole, but Jeremy kept walking. I ran over to him and I... Good God, man, didn't you notice your wife just fell in a manhole 100 feet back? Oh, thank goodness, said Jeremy. I thought I'd gone deaf. Lovely, lovely. So thoughtful of you, Mr. Pike. I do hope they got her out of the sewer. And if not, then it's one less mouth to feed, eh? Think about that. And this one is from Corporal Lindsay Douglas of the Victory Memorial Camp. He's one of the loyal members of the Home Army. Do you know what's one of the toughest things about having to wear camouflage trousers? You can never find them. Oh. Ah, yes! Because they're camouflaged. Very good. Brilliant, Corporal Douglas. Very, very funny. And may I say, we salute your service. It's good to know that you're there to protect us when the next war comes. I'm afraid we've come to the end of our time. If you hear a good joke, please don't hesitate to drop a note marked Humour Hour at our studio, 2 Marlborough House, in the centre of Wellington Wells. Tune in again next time for the best in English humour. See you soon. Well, it's getting late, isn't it? And it's time for all good wellies to cuddle up in bed. You don't want to be out after dark, do you? Foggy Jack might come for you. And then where would you be? In several places at once, wouldn't you? Would you like me to read you a bedtime story? Of course you would. Well, curl up in front of the telly, and Uncle Jack will tell you a story. Tonight's story is called Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time there lived a poor woodcutter and his wife and his 2 aged parents. The old man's name was Hansel, and the old woman's name was Gretel. There was little to eat, and when a hard winter came across the land, so hard that the wolves prowled the crossroads at night, the woodcutter could no longer feed his parents. He lay in bed with his wife, and they discussed what to do. The woodcutter's wife said, "Here's what we do, Liebling. We will lead them deep into the woods, yeah? To gather the firewood, okay? And then we will trick them, and we will leave them there. And natürlich, there will be enough bread for the both of us." For you see, they were not her parents, and they didn't particularly like her. Now at first the woodcutter said, "Well, I don't know, maybe I should leave you in the woods instead." But his wife said, "Oh, it's a funny man. No, they're old and they do not work anymore, okay?" And the woodcutter had to admit, she had a point. What the woodcutter did not know was that his parents had overheard the entire conversation, for they had very good hearing for old people, and they'd not been sleeping well. And Hansel said to Gretel, "Our son's going to leave us in the woods to starve. What shall we do?" Gretel said, "Let us gather bright pebbles by the light of the moon." The next day at dawn, the woodcutter and his wife led his parents deep, deep into the woods, deeper than they'd ever gone to cut firewood. The wife made a fire for them and said, "Rest by the fire while we chop the wood." And soon enough they heard the sound of chopping. Hansel and Gretel thought perhaps their son had not left them after all. But late in the evening the wind died down, and so did the sound of chopping. For it was only a branch that the woodcutter had rigged to bang against a tree in the wind. But Hansel and Gretel, they dropped bright pebbles all along the path into the woods, and they were able to follow them all the way back to the woodcutter's house, which had been their house when they raised him. When they came to the door, the woodcutter's wife, well, she was alarmed to see them. "You wicked people! Your son has been crying ever since you left him. He thought you did not want to come back. That night the woodcutter told his wife, "It's a gift from God. We don't have to leave my parents in the woods after all." "Oh, you fool! Idiot!" said the woodcutter's wife. "Do we have more bread heute Abend than we did yesterday?" And the woodcutter had already agreed once to abandon his parents, so he didn't really have a leg to stand on, did he? So he agreed to lead them out into the woods the next morning. That night, Hansel went to gather bright pebbles by the light of the moon, but the woodcutter's wife had locked the door, so he couldn't gather any. In the morning, Hansel begged his son for a crust of bread to eat on the forest path, but he did not eat it. Instead, as his son led him deep into the woods, he broke off small bits and dropped them on the forest path. All along the way, Hansel spoke to his son of happier days, when they both had been young and the land was fat. He was hoping to soften his son's heart, and the woodcutter, well, he smiled and nodded. For when you're going to kill a man, it costs nothing to be polite. And again, the woodcutter's wife made them a fire and made them lie down and rest by it, while the woodcutter and his wife went into the forest to chop wood. But they heard no branch banging against a tree, for the time was past for pretenses. Hansel said to Gretel, "Let us find our way home before night falls, because it's very cold and they're not coming back for us." And I'm afraid we've come to the end of our time. We'll have to continue this delightful story tomorrow night. Did Hansel and Gretel find their way home? And did the woodcutter welcome them back? And did they all live happily ever after? I hope not. What kind of fairy tale do you think this is? Tune in tomorrow